Hello everybody and welcome back to the United Stand. Happy Monday morning. And as you can see by the title, it looks like Manchester United have a new target, Ryan Gravenberch. And it's all been going on this morning. So many different outlets and journalists reporting this story. The race is on between Liverpool and Manchester United to sign Ryan Gravenberch. Whether that be a permanent deal, whether that be a loan, we'll get into all the stories and how likely this is going to be. Is it going to hurt our deal for Amrabat? Are we still going for Amrabat? What needs to happen in order for this deal to progress? Also some news on Raphael Varane potentially now looking at a move to Saudi and thinking, you know what, that might not be the worst idea. I might be put that under consideration a little bit more and potentially could be moving to Saudi before the end of the window. What a heartbreak that would be. I am completely against that move and I hope it doesn't happen. But we're going to get into it and discuss it all on the show. Happy Monday morning, everyone. Gonna be honest, it wasn't a great weekend of football, was it? Man United got beat and we had a really bad second half, and then obviously the Lionesses lost yesterday. The only upside is that Chelsea have spent $1 billion and they're still getting beat 3-1 by a 10-man West Ham. That's probably the only positive we can put out there. But it's a new week. We hope that it's going to be a fresh week in terms of Man United are actually going to get a win. And to do that, we do need to strengthen the squad, I have to say. I think if we had a player like Amrabat or even Gravenberch in for the Spurs game, could have been the fine margins between it being a different story. You know, we had some chances, we could have scored a goal, but defensively in the second half and through the midfield, we absolutely crumbled and our attack crumbled. And Ryan Gravenberch is that sort of profile that can work in both ways. But get your discussions in straight away. Would you prefer to sign Ryan Gravenberch or Amrabat? Because straight off the bat, I have to say, I really like Gravenberch. He's 21 years old, he's 6'3", he's physical, technically great. I like him, but he's a number 8. He's a box-to-box. He can go forward, he can go backwards, but he's more of he's a complete centre mid. Like, he can go back and forth. He's going to play the number 8. Casemiro's still going to play, and obviously you'd have Bruno or Mount as a 10. That's how it would work. But for looking at our midfield, I think we need someone maybe potentially with the attributes of Amrabat a little bit more. Like, I like Gravenberch, I think he's a really good player, but Amrabat for me is more defensively astute, which I think is needed because Casemiro's going to need breaks. He's not going to be able to play 60 games this season, 3 games a week. He can, obviously, but he's going to need a break to reach his highest levels and highest performances. Plus, if you're looking at games where we do really want to shore it up and think about how attacking Bruno can be and how attacking our front line can be and how far forward Mount can be in certain situations, Amrabat can also play as the 8 and he's technically good on the ball. He's obviously a little bit older and you're not going to get as many years out of him, and he's more defensive. He's not as attacking as Gravenberch, and you probably say Gravenberch probably has a higher ceiling in the grand scheme of things, but Amrabat's coming into the prime of his career and has all the attributes that we're really missing in that midfield. So we need both, probably. We do need both, but with this Glazer ownership and what we've heard in the recent weeks, you highly doubt that's going to happen. But getting your poll straight away, starting off with a poll down below, who would you rather sign, Gravenberch or Amrabat? I'm going to click Amrabat, even though I like Gravenberch a lot, and I do think United should be signing both. But we're going to get into it. I want to bring you the news and then I'll discuss it a little bit more with you guys. But starting off, we've got a lot to get through. So coming from Simon Mullock at The Mirror, Ryan Gravenberch remains a big admirer of Erik ten Hag and fears that he'll lose his place in the Dutch national team squad if he spends another season on the bench. So Gravenberch is seeking out this move. He wants to move, he wants to play, and obviously he's got that relationship with Ten Hag before. Mike Vergeway, who is a Dutch reporter and is very good around when Erik ten Hag was moving to Manchester United as Manchester United manager, and with surrounding the Anthony deal and the Martinez deal, he's a Dutch reporter. He's good in that sense. Both Man United and Liverpool want to sign Ryan Gravenberch. And then Simon Mullock at The Mirror again says there has been contract offers from Ryan Gravenberch from both Man United and Liverpool. Buy and value him at around 22 million, but a loan deal is more likely at this stage. Thoughts on that? Because would you want a permanent? Would you want a loan? I look at the fee for Ryan Gravenberch and I think 22 million is a steal. Like, it is genuinely a steal. If that's genuinely what Bayern Munich are valuing Gravenberch at, when you look at the midfielder market, it's a steal. He's 21 years old. He's got huge potential. Granted, it's not worked out at Bayern Munich, coming from Ajax. He joined the Ajax Academy, I think he was 8 years old when I was looking at him. And people at Ajax still can't believe he's not gone on to do what they thought he was going to do. Sometimes it just doesn't work out for players when they move to a certain club. there's a reason that Thomas Tuchel and Bayern Munich want to keep him. They can see the potential in him. They can see what he can bring. He's a good player. He's a very good player. And under Ten Hag, he was playing brilliantly, hence why he got his move to Bayern Munich. But, you know, some people, they play well at Ajax and they can't cut it elsewhere. But obviously some people can. De Jong, obviously, he's gone on to be brilliant. I know he had a bit of hiccups with Barcelona, but he's a brilliant player. Martinez has come from United, and yes, he's looked a bit shaky recently, but he had a brilliant first season. But then you look at the likes of, you know, Anthony. Terrible, really, when you think about it, for the amount of money we've paid. Gravenberch obviously hasn't kicked on it Bayern Munich yet. There's certain, you know, people go one way or the other, but Gravenberch, I think, it doesn't worry me that he's not getting minutes at Bayern Munich, because I know he's a good player. And 22 million is definitely a great fee. Man United can't afford 22 million and 29 million for Amrabat. It just won't happen. So in terms of looking at getting depth in and kind of having that surety across the midfield, you would think the most logical solution for this is a loan for Ryan Gravenberch and then a permanent move for Amrabat. And then you're looking at the midfield and you're thinking, okay, compared to last week, and I was looking at it and thinking, wow, we've not replaced Fred, who, despite the fact, you know, he didn't have a future at Man United, his profile needs replacing, there's no doubt about that. And we've not really got anyone else apart from Casemiro that's defensively secure. You could argue McTominay, but it's clear Ten Hag doesn't want to use him. So you've got to look at this and you think Ryan Gravenberch adds more physicality, and to that number 8 role is definitely a little bit more defensive than Mount, but he can get forward. And Amrabat would obviously give Casemiro competition and be a really versatile midfielder in there for us who gives defensive security completely. So that makes the most sense. Being in the race with Liverpool worries me, because they've got money. They've told everyone they've got £110 million to spend when the Caicedo deal collapsed, which, you know, after Caicedo's performance against West Ham, they're probably happy about. But I have no doubts that Caicedo is going to be a top class player, by the way, even though he had a poor debut. Mount had a poor debut, everyone got on his back. Caicedo is going to be a great player despite his poor debut. But they've told everyone they've got 110 million to spend. If Bayern Munich think, you know, we do want to let Gravenberch go and we actually do want to sell him, Liverpool wins the race. Liverpool wins the race immediately because they can go and buy him. We know Klopp likes him. If it's a loan deal, I'd say Man United win that race, because I think he'd prefer to come to Man United and work with Ten Hag. I really do get that sense from the reports coming out. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch up until deadline day, that's for sure. Let's see what the chats you guys are getting in. MKF says 22 million is ridiculously cheap. Gravenberch is a 21-year-old top talent without an injury history. Wout Potter says if Gravenberch would change mentality around, then maybe he's young, but in last season at Ajax and Bayern after little change. Do you know what it is with Gravenberch? I like the fact he wants to come and he knows he's going to be able to play minutes at Man United. The reason he wants to come is to get himself into the Euro squad for the Netherlands, because he feels like he's going to miss out by not getting minutes at Bayern Munich. The fact he actually wants to come and he feels like he will get minutes at Man United shows, you know, how good he thinks he is, and the fact he has belief in himself, and he probably looks at Man United's midfield and thinks, you know what, I can get into that. A few people would. You know, he probably does look at it in that sense. But when you look at the likes of Timber, who didn't want to join initially because he wasn't sure about first team football and thought to himself, you know, I might miss out on the World Cup squad. He didn't join because of that reason. That taught William van Gaal. Donny van der Beek's international career went down the pan as soon as he went to Man United. So I like the confidence he has in the fact he wants to come to Manchester United because he feels like he's going to get minutes and kickstart his career. So I like that mentality around him, which has been missing in the past. Let's have a look. Carlin Spellgrove says, I wonder why Erik ten Hag is off his rocker. There is a shadow manager at this club. There is a lot of people definitely, you know, getting on Erik ten Hag's back over the past weekend. I've seen a few people go to Erik ten Hag out. I mean, Ricky said on the show he thinks we need to get rid of the manager already, which is mental to me. I've got to say, I know a lot of people have strong feelings, and I absolutely hold Erik ten Hag accountable. I absolutely do. I think the weekend was on him. I really do. I think there's players not living up to their expectations, but I think Ten Hag got it tactically wrong again, and I think he's stubborn. I think he's massively stubborn. Playing Bruno on the right, he's stubborn, you know. And there is some issues that I look at and I think these need to be solved. But I look at Ten Hag, I think he's the best manager that we've had since Fergie. And I think there's a lot of potential there. What he did last year with getting top 4, getting third, after them first 2 defeats, everybody writing him off, having to deal with injuries, then Obviously, his only striker being Vegas for the second half of the season, the majority of the season. Eriksen injury, winning the Carabao Cup. I think he's earned the right to be given this opportunity and to be given the chance and to be given time. I look at Arteta and I ask you guys, do you think Arteta is... do you think Arteta's a good manager? He came 8th in his first 2 seasons with Arsenal. Granted, maybe he didn't have as much money in them first 2 seasons, but he still came 8th. And, there was question marks, massive question marks. So I'm not saying, Ten Hag's going to need that much time, because I don't think he will, especially with some of the money he spent. You would argue he probably shouldn't need that much time. I don't think he will need that much time, but people already calling for Ten Hag out is, for me, it just shows how reactionary this fan base can be, and I just think it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're allowed your own opinion, but I'm completely behind this manager. I do have to say, some of his signings do come under question, though. Some of his signings do come under question. And you look at Gravenberch and you think, again, it's a player he's worked with before, Dutch. And there has been that kind of correlation with Erik ten Hag. You look at Erik ten Hag's signings and who he's been linked to. Obviously, he wanted De Jong in, who he'd worked from before. I have no doubts that signing would have worked out. He didn't manage to get it. That's completely written off. We ended up going for Casemiro, who's been a great signing. Martinez, obviously, who he's worked with before, spent big on him, I think it was around 60 million it was on Martinez. Brilliant signing, had a great first season, and obviously he's not been himself the first couple of games of the season, but I think that's purely down to the fact I don't think anyone at Man United is 100% match fit, which is a worry at the moment. But Martinez, you have to say, a very, very good signing. You look at Anthony, and he's been a terrible signing. Erik ten Hag was hell-bent on getting him. We ended up paying 90 million for him. And so far, I back him. He's 22 years old, and I really hope he can develop and he can be that player that we thought he could be. But there's massive, massive question marks. And I've already said I think Pellistri should be starting over him at this point. I've got to the end of my tether with him. Like, my patience is worn thin, and I've backed him throughout, but my patience is massively wearing thin with Anthony. And you look at him and you think, that's not a good signing. Right now, you have to call a spade a spade. It's not a good signing. It's really not. Like, you've got to look at it and think, you can't look at Anthony and think it is. You look at Timber, who's gone to Arsenal. Yeah, he turned out he's going to be a good signing. We already can see he's good. He's a good player who he wanted. Then you look at Gakpo. He wanted Gakpo, who obviously, shared an agent with him. And he's from the Dutch league. Looks like a decent player. Not anything special that I can see yet, but definitely would have helped us out. I don't think it's something that necessarily massively was a necessity to us. I get it because obviously, I think he would have been a better option than Weghorst, but he was a decent signing. Then you look at Malacia, obviously from the Dutch league, looks decent for the amount we paid for him. And then obviously, that's about it so far. But now he's going in for Gravenberch, it looks like. I think Gravenberch would be a good signing, but you've got to look at this and think, does seem to be a correlation here, and you've got to hope it's going to work out. Super chats coming in from Daily Hibber. Morning, Beth. I think it makes more sense to move for Gravenberch over Amrabat, as Mainu can do the Amrabat role. Interesting, Daily. And I like your point. The only point that bothers me on that is, we're relying on, I think he's 18, Kobe Mainu. We're relying on an 18-year-old who's just coming back from a major injury, because he'll be coming back in around January time, Christmas time, to be Casemiro's backup if anything happens. And I don't think he's played a single Premier League game. That's a problem. You need cover for both, really, which is exactly what you guys are saying, and I agree with you. Jenna R says, great, another bench player, first mount, now this guy, we really continue to fall. I don't see Gravenberch as that, but you can have your own opinion. The one thing I would say, and I've got so much to say, so I want to get into the news, but we're going to discuss what happens to Mount if Gravenberch comes in a second. But more news coming out, because I want to get the exact news from you guys. And so it's coming out from Sam Mullock at the Mirror again, saying Bayern Munich have told clubs early in the transfer window that they don't want to sell Ryan Gravenberch. However, the player's desire is for more game time, and it has put Erik ten Hag and Jurgen Klopp on red alert. Then Samuel Luckhurst kind of joined the bandwagon and said Man United are considering a late move for Ryan Gravenberch. Obviously, he has direct contacts at the club, so he doesn't put anything out there unless it's true. And then he goes and says Man United have been in the market for another midfielder and would have leverage to recruit Gravenberch if Donny van der Beek leaves. And I don't want to be disrespectful to Van der Beek, because I really like him. He seems like a lovely guy. We've spoke to him with the United stand. We've interviewed him, and I wish him all the best for his career. It just didn't work out. But at this point, I'm like, can you just please go? Please, please, please just go. Because it's holding everything up. Like, just Donny van de Beek, please. Can somebody buy him? Because it's just holding things up for us. Like, we've not gone for Amrabat because he's not left. We've also, now Gravenberch, we have the opportunity to go for him, but we can't do it until Donny van de Beek leaves. Just please, free Donny van de Beek, because he probably wants to go as well. Like, he doesn't want to sit on the bench. And also, free Man United of having the burden of having a player that isn't good enough to play for us, according to Erik ten Hag, because or else he would have played him more. And, he's taking up a spot of someone who could be. And I still blame Man United for this, because we've let Fred go, and why do we have to sell Donny as well? Fred going is a loss to the squad. Fred going is a loss to the squad, and we'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. He should have been replaced. It shouldn't be both of them. Fred was more of a prominent member of the squad, and he played in important games last year. You look at, the top games, you look at Spurs at home, when we had probably our best performance of the season, Fred was man of the match. He was brilliant. You look at, games against the top six, Fred would always play. Against City, Fred played. Marked Kevin De Bruyne out the game. Why have we not replaced that profile, who, even though Erik ten Hag didn't see him as a long-term successor, clearly saw his profile as important in the big games? And I think there could be a situation where Erik ten Hag was told, Erik ten Hag thinks, I'll go for Mount now because I really want him and all these other teams are all over him. I'm not going to miss out on him if not. Man United have said, if another midfielder goes, you can get another one in. He's thinking, Fred's gone, he's going to be able to get another midfielder, and now the club's turned around and said, it's Donny van de Beek as well, or Scott McTominay. And that's probably why you've seen Donny van de Beek drop from the squad. You've seen McTominay not been used in the away game, even though it's a game we'd usually bring McTominay on in, because Ten Hag's now got to behave in a way where he's like, I need another midfielder. I am not going to use Van de Beek. I am not going to use McTominay. Get me another midfielder, because that's what I thought was going to be the case. So yeah, and also a lot of people, what you've got to realise, which is a really good point in there, is Mount is homegrown in English, and it's an important factor. Obviously, the quota between English players and foreign players needs to be met. So, anyway, moving on to a little bit more news here. So, Samuel Luckhurst, no, not Samuel Luckhurst, I've just read that one out. So, this is what we want. We've got a Romano update on the Gravenberch situation, and we know coming from Romano, this is exactly what's happening right now, and this is the point that Man United are at within this saga. Been so much news on it this morning, everyone. It's nice to have us linked to a player, that's a positive signing, really, rather than just being told every day of the week that deals are collapsing all over the place. So, coming from Romano, that Man United and Liverpool have both called to be informed on the situation with Ryan Gravenberch. Depends on Bayern, but they are now insisting to keep him still. One to watch until deadline day. So Gravenberch situation, the Gravenberch situation stays the same as 3 days ago. Man United and Liverpool both want to be informed on the situation. Depends on Bayern, but Bayern at the moment are still insisting to keep him. One to watch until deadline day. I think, to me, this is all these reports coming out about Gravenberch, wanting to go, and Gravenberch pushing the move. And all these reports saying, Man United and Liverpool want Gravenberch. I think Gravenberch wants the move. I think he wants minutes. I think he wants to try the Premier League experience. And I think his agent or, whoever's dealing in Amrabat, in Gravenberch's camp, is pushing this news out there, which is exactly what happens. This is how players get moves. They're pushing the news out there because they want to push Bayern Munich into selling or loaning him. He wants the move. So as of now, as Romano said, Bayern want to keep him. But I think if Gravenberch keeps pushing for this news, it's definitely one to watch. Definitely one to watch. And I've seen a couple of people say, we got Sabitzer on loan from Bayern, look how well that turned out. And yeah, Sabitzer wasn't a good signing. He was okay, nothing more. I think he got very, very overrated very quickly. But I think Gravenberch is more of what we need. He's, for us, a better profile than Sabitzer. He's got height, which we do lack, and it is an important factor in the Premier League. He's got physicality. And he's obviously younger and has a lot more potential. Hornet says, hi Beth. The Varane rumours absolutely stun me. No way we would sell one of our best defenders. It's just unimaginable. It does show show, though, how no one will go nowhere near Maguire even if he was free. Hornet, thank you for your super chat. We'll get onto the Varane stuff in a little bit for sure. And yeah, Mikel Howell says Maguire holding the club to ransom. I mean, we could talk about that. Ten Hag clearly doesn't want him out with a minor injury of the squad at the weekend. Again, Ten Hag's never going to come out in public and say, no, I don't want Maguire, McTominay or Van de Beek, but he can do it through his actions and dropping them all from the squad, apart from McTominay, who's obviously on the bench. But he didn't use him when you'd expect him to. He's showing to Man United and showing to the players, you know, you need to move on. And then lastly, coming in from Pletty Goal, obviously Sky reporter Florian Plettenberg in Germany. Obviously, he's close to clubs like Bayern Munich and in the Bundesliga. He says Manchester United and Liverpool are favourites to welcome Ryan Gravenberch if Bayern give the go-ahead for him to leave. So basically, to sum this story up, Gravenberch wants to come to United. Erik ten Hag wants him. So does Jurgen Klopp. Both are in the race. Both want to move for him. Man United have to sell Donny van de Beek if they want to get him on a permanent, but they could afford to loan him. The problem is Bayern Munich still want to keep him because they see him as a valuable player. Thomas Tuchel likes him. But if anything changes and Bayern Munich change their mind, Gravenberch will probably leave to either Liverpool or United. Question to you guys, who wins the race? Liverpool or United on this one? My instinct is to say Man United, but if it comes down to money, it's Liverpool. James Cave says, morning Beth, I'm surprised nobody's made any concrete offers for Manu Kone. Do you think he'd be a good alternative option to Amrabat or Gravenberch? I like Kone, I think he's a good player. We've been linked to him before. I think Liverpool have been linked to him as well. Good player. To be honest, I've not seen like absolutely loads of him, but I know he's a good player. I still would prefer Amrabat and Gravenberch, I think. I think I would. I know more about both of them players, but Manu Kone is definitely a good player and I wouldn't be disappointed if we signed him. Aku Akshai says, does United really have a scout network? We never seem to find any rare young talents. What's the use of scouts if we're only going to get high profile names? Well, I've heard that we do actually scout all these talents, but the hierarchy says no because they don't want to take the risk. That's just what I've heard on the grapevine. That we have scouted players before, like we scouted Caicedo. We didn't end up getting him because the board wouldn't pay 4.5 million for him. We have scouted players in the past. It's just the fact we've not paid the money for him. We don't want to take the risk. James Cave says, oh no, I've read that one out. I've read that one out and I've read that one out as well. Dylan Hardman, morning Beth, hope you're well, and can I say you look amazing this morning. Where do you think Man United will finish this season if we don't have Amrabat? Thank you Dylan for your super chats, thank you very much. And honestly, based off the first two games of the season, you'd have to say Man United aren't getting top four, but I have a higher perspective on this, and I look at the first two games of last season, how poor we were, and I do still believe, maybe it's naive of me and maybe it's just blind hope, that I still believe Man United will bounce back and I still believe we'll get top four. Thinking about challenging, as Roy Keane would say, you're in cookie land, not going to happen, but I think we'll still get top four. Daily Hibbert says, Beth, do you think Onana would be a perfect midfield reinforcement? His athleticism and strength would be very welcomed at our club. Daily, I like Onana of Everton. Not my top choice. I've watched him a lot. I think he's decent. I think he's a little bit overrated by United fans, if I'm being honest. I think he's a good player. Definitely not worth 50 mil, which is what Everton were sticking the price tag. They were sticking a 50 mil price tag on him. And I watched him at the weekend and I just didn't think he looked like anything special at all, really. I think he's a good player. I think there's other options that I'd prefer, to be honest. But yeah, it's a lot of you guys saying, how are you thinking we're going to get top four? The only reason I'm thinking we're getting top four is because of last season, when we all thought there was absolutely no chance of it after the first two games of the season, and then we ended up, changing and adapting, and we end up coming good. I've got to say, there's no signs that that's going to happen out of the first two games, but again, there was no signs of it last year, so it's literally just me hoping that things are going to change around under Ten Hag. But from if I was just to look at the first 2 games of the season, I'd be like, no, we can't get top 4. Absolutely not. But I'm just thinking about last season. Really. Like MA says, we got scored by Brentford this time last year and finished 3rd. So, I mean, but we shouldn't have to do that. We shouldn't have to get, we shouldn't have to have a poor start to the season. It's inexcusable. Because if we're looking towards the end of next season and we're 3 points off top 4, you look at the first games of the season, you think, it's ridiculous. Why weren't we ready? Because that can cost us. Man United don't see it that way. If we end up getting like Gravenberch and Amrabat in the last 2 weeks of the window, I think, imagine if we had them players in earlier. We probably wouldn't have missed out on them points. It's really silly. We're playing Nottingham Forest at home and I'm not confident going into that game. That's an issue. Jake Adam says how underwhelming Sabitzer is. He still played better than Mount, with Mount being able to buy Sabitzer and Amrabat, and the Mount facilitated Gravenberch. Shows how much of a bad deal Mount is. Don't agree with you at all. I think Mount's much better player than Sabitzer, I have to say. I really do. But that's obviously your opinion. Chris Fornica says, can't we just offer Maguire to Saudi and be done? Maguire probably doesn't want to go. And maybe Saudi don't want him. That is a possibility. Anyway, talking a little bit about, I want to talk about Varane and move on to that subject, but just want to talk a little bit about Gravenberch and what he's going to provide. 6'3", 21 years old, plays as an 8, physically very capable, but also technical and agile as well, and moves quickly on the ball considering his height, which sometimes can make players a little bit, leggy, but he's very quick on it. Plays quick on the ball, he's agile, and he progresses the ball very well. I remember under Erik ten Hag at Ajax, he progressed the ball at the pitch brilliantly, and we need a ball progressor. I'm not saying he's the top end, but we definitely need a ball progressor. And here's an interesting one for you. The Ajax youth coach that he worked with, by the way, I don't believe this, but I'm reading it out for you guys. Technically, I would say he's a better version of Paul Pogba in his best days of Juventus in terms of his technique and presence on the pitch. So he rated him very highly. Everyone at Ajax rated him very, very highly. He's a good player. He's similar to the Pogba profile, but I've got to say, Pogba on his day is like out of this world good, and Gravenberch isn't as good as him on his day. But that's what the coach said, so I just wanted to kind of read it out to you because I thought it was an interesting fact. Duncania says, sceptical about Gravenberch, definitely an issue with Dutch players transitioning from the Eredivisie to the Premier League, and the fact he hasn't gone and shone in Germany is concerning. I do agree, it is a little bit of a concern, I have to say. It is a little bit of a concern. But I still think he's a good player, and I would sign him. I would take the risk. But anyway, I do want to talk a little bit about Raphael Varane now and the absolute devastation it would cause if he did go to Saudi Arabia. Dave Gwill says, I think we will sign Amrabat and loan Gravenberch. It's what's needed. Dave, I hope we do, and that's what we should do. But I have last week, my hope with United was about here. Last week just brought my hope to here. I have at the moment, I have no hope we'll sign anybody else, apart from probably a second choice keeper. My hope with United's actually on the floor. I don't trust him to do anything well, the transfer team anyway. So that's what we should do, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, it's coming from Saudi Arabia, and it is a very well-followed Saudi account. They've got over 400,000 followers. Not exactly sure how reliable they are because, I'm not very familiar with the Saudi news world, which I probably should get myself more familiar with because they are starting to become a big part of European football now. It's coming out that Al Ittihad are in preliminary talks with Manchester United about the signing of Raphael Varane, who was given positive indications about playing in the Saudi League. If that is true or happened, I would be absolutely gutted. So Al Ittihad are in talks with Man United about the signing of Raphael Varane, who's given positive indications about playing in the Saudi Pro League. Find it interesting that Varane last week, it was only coming out that he wants to play at least another year in Europe, and he's shut down, approaches from Saudi. Now it's coming out as positive indications. Maybe he played against Tottenham and thought, you know what, can't be bothered with this. Let's go and make the bag in Saudi Arabia and have a nice little time with my family. Maybe that's what's happened. I hope to God it's not. But I really don't, I really hope this doesn't happen. But sadly, in my head, I could see it. I could see it happening. We know Varane has a top mentality. He's won everything there is to win. World Cup, Champions League, La Liga. He's come to Man United and he wanted a new challenge. He's won a trophy. Bear in mind, it was the Carabao Cup, but he has won a trophy. He's had the Premier League experience. He could turn around now and think, you know what? Probably not going to be challenging for the Prem or the Champions League with Man United this year. I love United, but he's already complained about the amount of games that they're playing. You know, he put that statement out there about player welfare and the amount of games and the strain it is on his body. He's retired from international football, you know, to focus on club football. He's won everything there is to win. Maybe he thinks, you know what, I'm going to be on an unbelievable wage. It's really great out there, like the way of living, the way that they treat you, all the footballers have said it's completely lavish, and he's going to get paid a lot. He's going to set his family up for life, even though he's already completely loaded because he's a top level footballer, but he's going to set his family up for life. He's going to get paid a lot of money. It's a good family life for him. Probably gets to spend more time with his family. Maybe he's thinking, you know what, I might as well go. Maybe he's thinking that. I hope he's not. And if someone said to me now, Beth, do you think Varane will leave and go to Saudi by the end of this window? I'd say no, I don't think he will. I think he will stay for at least one more year. But I won't be surprised if he's thinking about it. And do you know what? It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world if we had signed, the likes of Kim Min-jae, who's ready and available to come in and play first choice centre-back. But we've not. Varane is our best centre-back. Martinez is brilliant, but I would still say Varane probably edges it as our best centre-back. And it would be a huge loss if he went. He's a leader. I think he's massively unfairly criticised in the fan base. I have no idea why. Yes, on the ball, sometimes he could be a little bit better, but he's capable, very capable, and he's an excellent defender. He came up clutch for us against Wolves. Like he's got that elite mentality. Even against Spurs, he probably looked like our biggest goal threat off corners. Which, it's not a huge achievement, don't get me wrong, but he's a massive leader at the back and he's huge for us. If he left, we'd be massively left in the lurch. You'd have to play Lindelof and Martinez and hoped and prayed that nobody got injured and hoped and prayed that you could get someone in of extreme quality that could come in straight away and start for Man United. Because I'm not resorting back to Maguire being in the starting 11. It's just not happening. And one injury to Lindelof, that could be the case. So I really hope that Varane doesn't go. One thing I would say is, even if he doesn't go this year, I think next year he will. I think this is probably our last year of Varane, which is really sad because I absolutely love him. I love him. I think he's a brilliant player. I really do. Champions League Varane, Rolls Royce Varane, I think he's a brilliant player. But here's one I wanted to bring into the conversation as well and get your opinions out on this. Tommy Burrow says we have Johnny Evans. Please, no. I will literally just move to Australia and not look back if he ends up being our first choice centre-back. But it's like, you look at it, it's Saudi, and this is, I wanted to find a way to bring up Jamie Carragher's article once again, because he said something again about it the weekend, saying, after watching Casemiro against Spurs, this article's looking more and more true, that he brung up. Everyone knows the article about saying Man United have got a bad deal with Casemiro, paying 70 million with a 5-year contract because he's already looking leggy, despite the fact he's been left on his own in midfield in the Wolves game and in the second half of the Tottenham game as well, and everybody knows that he takes games to warm up. Everyone knows that. But when you look at Saudi Arabia, realistically, they're probably going to come in for Casemiro in a year or two, probably 2 years. And they'll probably pay us a big fee. Fabinho went from Liverpool, they got a big fee for him. Henderson went, they got a fee for him. So actually, Carragher, with Saudi Arabia out here, this is probably a very good deal. We've got an elite player in Casemiro who is brilliant and knows that role inside out and was brilliant for us last year. And he probably will end up going to Saudi Arabia for quite a decent bit of money. So I don't think you can look at it that way anymore, as if Casemiro's just going to sit in Man United and see out a contract, even if he's too leggy to play, which I don't even think will be the case anyway. He just needs minutes to warm up. And he's a great player, but we will have Saudi coming in for him, just like the way Saudi are coming in for Rafael Varane. I love Varane. He is slightly injury prone, but he's managed that so much better under Ten Hag, and Ten Hag manages him well. I hope he doesn't go to Saudi Pro League because we are in the mud if he does. We are in the mud. Who do you get in now? Who do you honestly go and get in that you know can come in and play at Varane's level week in, week out? How good were Varane and Martinez last year when they built that partnership up? I'm worried about this one. I'm not going to lie, I am worried. I'm worried about it. I think it's something that could happen. Anyway, moving on to a little bit more news. Everyone get your comments in on that. Savage says Varane, you absolutely will for Varane, this can't happen. Sell Varane and buy Bastoni. Nope, I wouldn't do that. We need to keep Varane this season. And we've got, can't get rid of Deadwood, but our best players can be persuaded by Saudi. State of United is terrifying. Don't you agree? Don't you agree on that? Michaelis says, package for Saudi, Maguire, McTominay, Henderson and Brandon Williams, 105 mil. Problem is they're not wanted, I don't think, by Saudi because it's not been said, but a lot of them players won't want to go there. Have to wait and see. Anyway, let me move on to the last little bit of news. So, coming from Fabrizio Romano, with Dean Henderson likely to leave Manchester United amid interest from Crystal Palace, Benfica keeper Vlachodimos is at the top of the list of backup keepers. He's expected to leave Benfica. I really hope I've pronounced his name right. Looking at his name on the screen, I had no idea how to pronounce it. I've gone with Vlachodimos. I think it's right. Sorry if it's not. But you know what? There's some good news here. Good news is, looks like Dean Henderson could be going. Thank you, Roy Hodgson. Getting a little bit of money for him. And the price probably has dropped because United are probably now desperate to let him go. And Dean Henderson will be pushing this move. So, Dean Henderson goes to Palace, which is good for us. Problem is, I feel like this could maybe be our only signing of the last few weeks of the window. I know I'm being negative. I know I'm looking at glass half empty. But that's how deflated I felt over the past week, over the news that's come out. Backup goalkeeper always seems to be one of our signings that we do every single year. Last year it was Dubravka. Vlachodimos is on there now. I'm going to be honest, I really don't know much about this keeper. I don't. Like, if I sat here and said I did, I would be lying. I don't know much. But he's not going to be our number one anyway. Anana's going to be our number one, so it doesn't really matter to me. As long as he's decent, that's absolutely fine. And I think he is decent, but I couldn't tell you 100% what exactly he's going to bring. What I did see before, I was looking at a few accounts that I follow on Twitter that are very well into, their goalkeepers. And I saw a few saying he's not the type of profile that plays out from the back very well. Obviously, I don't know this. I've not really watched him, but this is just what I'm seeing, which isn't exactly the way Erik ten Hag wants to play. So maybe it's a different sort of profile. But he's not going to play anyway. Anana's number one, and Anana's really the only signing at the moment that we know is a great signing because Mount's not hit the ground running, and we've not even seen Højlund yet. So that's a little bit of news coming in. Looks like Henderson will leave, thank God, because it looked like he was going to stay around. After Henderson leaves, we still need to get rid of Maguire, McTominay, and Brandon Williams. I think McTominay would stay. I wouldn't be absolutely devastated if McTominay stayed. I think there is a player there, a squad player for sure. I think he has got attributes that can help us. And if we can only get rid of two after that, it would be Maguire and Williams for me. McTominay, he's still kind of liked by Ten Hag. Like, he can play him. Like, he's a decent squad player. If you ask me, would I want him to leave and us to get money for him, I'd absolutely say yes. I absolutely would say yes. But if you're asking me out of them, who would I prefer to get moved on? Williams isn't going to play at United. And Maguire can get money for him, and he's hanging around, and Ten Hag doesn't want to play him. He's not good enough. So that's what we need to do. But it's good that Henderson looks like he's leaving, and hopefully this move to Palace does end up hitting off for us. Seen the chat saying that there's some news from Romano coming out surrounding Amrabat and that he's still our priority. So I'm just going to have a look and see if anything's come out that I've missed on this. Let's have a little look. Nothing I can directly see coming out. Was it on his... I know he put a YouTube video out. It might be from that. Here we go. Yeah, I've got it. He did put the YouTube video out, and there's some quotes coming out now. And Romano has said Amrabat remains the top name in Man United's list for a new midfielder. Brilliant. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Because Amrabat, like I said at the start of the show, and we did the poll, despite how good Gravenberch is, and he's good, and despite how much I'd want Gravenberch, and I would want him, I would want to get both. And if I had to pick between one, I would go with Amrabat because his profile is more needed in our squad. It's as simple as that. It's not because I think he's a miles better player. It's because his profile and what he can bring to the team suits us more right now. I like Gravenberch, but, you know, you beg to question when Gravenberch comes in, where does Mount play? Because you'd see, you know, Gravenberch would play as that 8, and you'd think it creates a balanced midfield, putting Gravenberch in with Bruno. Where does Mount play? Does he move to the wing? I doubt it. Does he then become a competitor to Bruno? If he becomes a competitor to Bruno, why was he a priority straight away? So, yeah, I'm glad Amrabat remains top priority. Obviously, I do want Gravenberch as well, if we could get him on loan, but Amrabat definitely is more suited to what we need right now because he can cover for Casemiro and be a more defensively capable 8 as well. Duran Luckham with Super Chat in, thank you very much. Thank you very much for that one. And, yeah. That is what's coming out from YouTube. That's where we're at. TalkSport as well, saying now that Man United are considering a move for Ryan Gravenberch. Guys, question for you. Before we wrap up the show, I wanted to ask you a question. Gravenberch and Amrabat, if Man United somehow managed to get them both in, which I don't think is likely because I just don't trust us to do good business. If we get them both in, is that a good midfield going into the season? Are you happy with a midfield of Casemiro, Amrabat, Gravenberch, Mount, Bruno and Eriksen? Are you happy with that? I have to say, I am happy with it. I am happy with it. I think it's a good midfield to go in. You've got the defensive security within Casemiro and Amrabat. You've got Gravenberch, Mount and Eriksen who can all play as 8s. Eriksen and Mount can also play as a 10 with Bruno. It gives variation. I'd be happy with that. The problem is 2 big gaps we're missing right now in the midfield. Both aren't still here. And that's backup number 6 in Amrabat and a more defensively capable 8 in Gravenberch. JV says, morning Beth, love watching your shows. I am sick to death of the style of play and quality at the minute and agree Palestri should 100% start. Join the club, JV, we're all in it together. I am sick to death of the style of play as well, and I think, God, if Palestri doesn't get a start against Forest at home, I'm going to be really, really gutted, because what else can he do, really? What else can he do? He needs a chance. And also puts Anthony in his place and gives him a little bit of a shove and says, look, you need to step up. You need to step up. I've said this before. I love Rashford. I think he's a brilliant player. Brilliant player. And I agree, top teams would want to snap him up. I think he offers so much. But against Forest, I would genuinely bench him. And I would bench Anthony. Start a front 3 of Garnacho on the left, because I think he did enough in the first half to keep his place. Martial up front and Palestri on the right. That's what I do. And if Martial isn't fit enough to start up front, I'd start Sancho as false 9. Players need to realise they're not undroppable. And they can't get away with having really poor performances. Zeno Madanen, deadline day is close. Jamie Vardy for a low move. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Mike Smith says, hi Beth, do you think that if the takeover of the club would stabilise the club? Yeah, it would stabilise the club because I think the Glazers are awful owners. So a takeover would definitely stabilise us a lot more, and we'd actually know what direction this club is going in, which nobody knows at the minute, but that's a topic for another day. So yeah, that's where we're at, everyone. That is where we're at. Lastly, I wanted to say, again, with Amrabat being priority, makes sense. You know, despite the fact Fred, it was time to move him on, his profile is a loss in the squad. And like I said, he was starting in the big games. He was starting against Spurs. He was starting against City. He was starting against Arsenal. He was starting against top teams. Amrabat would do that too. I have no doubts. If we get Amrabat in, he starts against Arsenal away. He has to. Because it gives you that defensive security in the midfield that you need on away games against teams with top quality. So we needed to replace that sort of profile. Amrabat's a completely different profile to Fred, but he gives that defensive security that Fred also gives as well, and can move the play going forward too, the way Fred attempted to do, and sometimes paid off and sometimes didn't. But look, everyone, that's where we're at now. Gravenberch, Liverpool and Man United in the race to sign him if Bayern Munich give it the all good to go. Donny van der Beek still lingering at the club. Samuel Luckhurst says that deal needs to happen to give Man United leverage to sign Gravenberch. But Romano comes out and says that Amrabat is still the priority name for Man United as a midfield option. And hopefully we see that deal done, get done within this week. Love it. Love it if we go in against Nottingham Forest and that deal's, on the verge of being done. Don't see it happening, but it would really pick things up after what was a horror show of news for last week and then a horrible game at the weekend. And hopefully Varane stays and doesn't go to the Saudi Pro League. We'll bring you more updates on that as they come. Hopefully Henderson can get his move to Palace as the week progresses, get him off the books. It's one that we can get a bit of money for, and it relieves us of having that player hanging around that we know just there isn't, it isn't positive him being here. He wants to play first team football, and realistically he shouldn't be a second team keeper. He should be playing first team football. We get a bit of money for him. Good stuff. That's exactly what we need. And hopefully as well, to finish off the show, Højlund on the bench against Forest. I hope it happens. I think there's so much pressure on his shoulders. I don't want there to be, but there is. Because of how poor Rashford's been as a 9, and because of the lack of options we have, there is so much pressure on him to come in and do well. So hopefully at home against Forest, Højlund gets his opportunity. We can see him getting into the squad and taking up that first team position. I've seen, okay, quickly just before we wrap up the show, it always happens about this time in the morning, we get a little bit more news. Was going to wrap up, but news coming out from Luckhurst on Amrabat now too, saying Amrabat being out of contract next year is not strong enough incentive for Manchester United. A United official screwed up his face during pre-season tour when Amrabat's name was mentioned. Why do we have people at the football club that have no idea what they're doing? Why? And this is true as well. It's coming from Luckhurst, who has sources at the club. A United official, I want to know who this is, screwed up his face during the pre-season talk when Amrabat's name was mentioned. Probably because you don't even know who he is. If you actually, knew football properly, you'd know he was one of the best players at the World Cup and he's the exact profile that we need at Man United right now. And he's a great player. And him being out of contract is not a strong enough incentive for Man United. Yet Mount being out of contracts next year was, and I like Mount and I back him. But we've just signed Mount, who's out of contracts next year as well. What is the difference? What, because Mount's English and because Amrabat's not? That's what you start to think about and it wouldn't surprise you with the people that are in charge at Man United. It really wouldn't. Oh, it's just frustrating. It's just frustrating. It's then come out from Luckhurst again. If Man United truly wanted Amrabat, he would already be in Manchester by now. Wow. So, wow. So Luckhurst is basically saying we have the money to get him, and this stuff surrounding Donny van der Beek needing to go is a load of rubbish, basically. Because if we wanted him, he'd already be here. That's what that says to me. Oh, if we don't get him, I'll be fuming. I really will be fuming. If we miss out on him, because even though Ten Hag wants him, officials at Man United think they know better and have screwed up their face at the name of Amrabat, it will really annoy me, because we've seen this before and we thought this was different. We thought Ten Hag was getting who he wanted. We've seen it happen before where people in charge at Man United who realistically don't know football very well, because if they did, we would have had a better time of it regarding transfers over the last decade, have said no to managers over targets. Van Gaal said it, Mourinho said it, because they think they know better. And just to read it out again, because someone asked me to read it out again, it's coming from Luckhurst that Amrabat being out of contract next year is not a strong enough incentive for Manchester United. A United official screwed up his face during the pre-season talk when Amrabat's name was mentioned. It's just United all over. Completely clueless. Completely clueless. If there's people on that transfer team that are telling Ten Hag no over Amrabat because they don't think he's the right person to come in and because they don't think he's the right profile, it sums Man United up. Because there's a reason Liverpool were interested, there's a reason he was one of the best players at the World Cup, and there's a reason Ten Hag wants him. He's the right profile. Oh God, this club, it never fails to amaze you, does it? It never fails to amaze you. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm so annoyed. And I know Fabrizio said he's still the priority for Man United, but now I'm reading, does it mean that he's the priority for Ten Hag? And the reason it's not happened is because there's certain members of the transfer team kind of putting a halt to this. €29 million we can get him for. Just so you're aware, 29 million. When there's the likes of, you know, players going for hundreds of million. It's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. Sally, brilliant point. Perhaps the gaping hole in our midfield is enough of an incentive. You tell him. You tell him. Is watching them first 2 games in Wolves and Spurs not a big enough incentive for you to go and get Amrabat? You look at that midfield and think that's okay. Someone sort it out, seriously. Oh God, I can't wait for this club to be sold and everyone who's incompetent to get shipped out. Because there is many people in that club that are incompetent. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it wrong. We've heard, I've heard, like, you know, off camera from people that very much know what goes on at that club, that there's people in that transfer team that are not respected in the industry and are not good enough to be doing business for Man United, but are there. Qatar comes in or any ownership comes in and that changes, so I can't wait for that to happen. And I'm getting annoyed because that from Luckhurst is just ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. A United official screwed up his face during the pre-season tour when Amrabat's name was mentioned. Oh. You beg to believe, don't you? And obviously I'm not calling Luckhurst out on this. He's just writing what he knows and what he's been told. It's good journalism. I'm just saying the actual information is just disappointing. But yeah, Romano and Luckhurst saying different things. Maybe, you know, Romano's always been, you know, true to his word, so that kind of keeps me positive on this. But at the same time, Luckhurst has very good insight at the club, and what he's saying comes from more of a, you know, inside the club sort of perspective, really. God, we'll have to wait and see how this plays out. We'll have to wait till it plays out. It's really negative to end the show on, but here we are. Anyway, guys, if you want Amrabat or you want Gravenberch or you just want to see a midfielder signing before the end of the window, preferably before the Forest game, make sure you hit a like on this video. Hit a like if you're excited for Højlund to be part of the matchday squad against Forest. Let's hope that happens. And hopefully we get some good news regarding outgoings and incomings this week. We'll be bringing you all the latest news on the United stand as the week goes on and as the day progresses. I think Mark's video of Ben Foster will be out at some point today. Make sure you stay tuned for that in the afternoon. Thank you everyone for joining me. Thank you for all the comments. We're in this together. I'll see you on the next one, everyone. Have a lovely Monday.